All right, since people have often asked me what I think about Forge and Fire, I'm going to give you my opinion and some commentary on a compilation, basically, of several blades that would not keel. And we'll see how it goes. I haven't actually watched this yet, so I'm just going to jump into it fresh. And before I start, I'm just going to point out that I have a lot of respect for Doug Marcaida. So if I end up criticizing his form or anything, keep that in mind. He's very impressive in his knife fighting skills. We'll just take a look at how it goes. Oof. I just wish I wouldn't constantly cut back and forth between the test and the reaction of the makers. Anyway, so frame by frame, you can see how he's turning it. In the middle of a swing, he goes from mostly horizontal to sort of diagonal. And now I've handled swords with overly round handles or other problems that can make it turn on impact. That can definitely happen. You've probably seen that on some mail tests where I struck something and on impact the blade would turn. That's a different story. Here you can see the blade is already turning. Now it gets worse, of course, the moment it impacts, it turns even more because the edge alignment was off to begin with. Now, it's not as bad as some made it out to be. You can see here, right before the moment of impact, he's not slapping it with the flat. If you look at it at full speed, it looks like that's what he's doing. Like he's not even hitting it with the edge at all, but it's basically just hitting it with the flat. That's not what's happening. But at the same time, if you slap the flat of a blade against something, it should not stay bent. It should not deform permanently. Ideally, you temper it such that the blade can temporarily deform and then spring back. So I don't actually have a problem with this. I still agree with Doug that this blade was too soft. A lot of people were criticizing him heavily in the comments for that. And yeah, the edge alignment was off, but not as bad as it looked. He goes basically from a vertical sword position to a horizontal, and this is where you can introduce deviations. So whenever I test blades, I try to make it as consistent as possible and do the same cut every time. So what I like to do is start out in a high guard at a 45-degree angle and then just follow through with this 45 degree.
Do it.
Now, this is not the way you would fight, like a perfectly, rigidly set up, clean, precise 45-degree angle. Ideally in combat, you would still get good edge alignment because that makes for an effective cut, but it's not going to be quite as ideal as it is in cutting tests. However, if you want to test the sword rather than the user's skill, I think it makes a lot of sense. For example, if you want to do a horizontal cut for maximum consistency, the sword should start at a horizontal plane and then complete the cut in a horizontal plane for ideal edge alignment. Anyway, let's see what happens. Stop cutting back and forth, please. Just show us the cut. Okay, so here we go. All right, let's take a look at that. Once again, you see the blade tips over, and by the time it connects, it's already out of alignment. And that puts a lot of stress on the blade. Again, you could argue that if it's properly tempered, it can withstand that. Now, my problem with this is less with the fact that it broke the blade, because, yeah, there was still something wrong. The blade was too brittle. But the issue is more that if there are inconsistencies like that, that could introduce a bias toward one blade over the other. Because if the edge alignment is better with one sword versus the other, this could come out on top, even though they are arguably more equal in quality. So this is why I think it's very important to establish ideal edge alignment and start out at exactly the angle you want to cut at, and then just go through with that. That confused look, I like that. He's like, huh? What? Because he was already expecting to lose because his blade bent, and he's like, huh? The other guy's blade broke. So, yeah, this is some of the interesting stuff that happens on here. And this is also why I generally think it's more desirable to have a softer blade than an overly hard brittle blade. Because this you can fix. Like, he could still continue with the tests. So if you're gonna, if a blade is going to fail, it's better if it bends rather than break, which, I mean, I don't have to point that out, it's pretty obvious. Whoa, it turned on impact. I think the blade was probably so dull that the clothing just turned it. Sharpness does matter. I keep saying that. Ooh. Oh my. Okay. Let's see what happened here. Okay, here he actually starts at a diagonal. So this is arguably better. You can tell here that this does seem aligned. The blade is still at a about 45-degree angle. And it doesn't look like it's turning, really. So, oh yeah. This is on the blade. Like, if you look at here, the moment it impacts, it actually counter twists. The top of the blade twists in kind of a different direction. And then the entire thing just, oh, look at that. Ouch. That is that is brutal. So here's the problem. If you look at this out of context and you show somebody just this screenshot while trying to make the point that Doug Marcaida doesn't know how to cut with swords, that is really misleading. Because I honestly don't think that was on him. Hard to say. I'm not claiming to be able to analyze this 100% perfectly, but I think that's what's going on here. Okay, that is quite good, and you see the result. So here's also the other thing, like, even though I'm pointing out that any inconsistency will throw the test result off, he does seem to perform the cut basically the same way every time. Just like with the other sword here, he's starting low and then raising it above his shoulder and doing a diagonal downward cut from there, and you can see that this is pretty clean. So here we can see, you can see that the edge line is very, very slightly off, which you can also see, toward the end, it starts to tip a little bit, and that's very difficult to avoid. Like, it happens to a lot of experienced cutters where, we're not robots. It's not going to be 100% laser precision accuracy. Even if it's arguably less than 100% ideal, consistency is actually more important. And since he did the two cuts the same way, same distance, it's not really a problem with that. That's a hard test. Not just because it's a very massive, dense target, but also because sand is very abrasive to the edge.
Your edge is razor sharp.
I do not like the term razor sharp, especially with regards to swords. An actual razor edge is quite a bit different. It's much sharper and extremely fragile, but that's a pet peeve of mine. I'm nitpicking. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, you can really see the difference in sharpness there. Because he's doing the cuts the same way, it's just one of the two swords has a much greater effect due to the better edge. Looking at how he does the test swing there, that's good. I don't see any issue with the mechanics there. Again, the guy knows what he's doing. He's a trained martial artist. It's just that he has more experience, as far as I know at least, more experience with knives than with swords, which handle a bit differently, of course. But yeah. And you can tell that he's more experienced with single-handers. Whoa. Well then. Let's look at that again. So he does it the same way, and edge alignment is good. Yeah, you can see on impact it's still good, and then the moment it hits, it starts to twist. Again, that's not Doug's fault. That is just the edge fails to bite in, and it's basically deflected by just the toughness of the skin itself. So, yeah, this is definitely on the edge. That's not on him. Well, let me know if you enjoy this sort of video format where I comment on weapon tests. I can do that every now and then, not just Forge and Fire, but also other cutting tests and whatnot that I find on YouTube. So, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and have a good one, folks.